relate to it when you.
This is Coffee with Holistic Dog Professionals. Learn from Roman and David how to become your dog's best friend.
Hi there, how you guys doing? So,
Hello, Roman.
what's going on today? Hey, what's up?
I think we're getting ready for fireworks season.
Oh man, that makes lots of noise, I guess. I get already goosebumps because I see all these stands popping up. And I was like, oh man, and I'm like 500 feet away from there. And I have four dogs, two small ones, two big ones.
Ooh.
Now, here's what's happening. I have one dog who is a Hurricane Sandy survivor. So his story was kind of like shaking, water, losing his parents. He went through a lot. He was basically a month, basically in the basement. And the rescue back then, um, uh, FIFA, oops, FEMA didn't have those organized about the pets, so they would just pull the people out. The pets will be staying behind. So his owner died. Handicapped people staying in the house. Rescues come in, take the people out with the helicopters. And you can imagine downtown New York having a helicopter land over your house, pulling the people over the water, right? And it took me 4 years to get him back together.
Wow.
That every noise that came out of nowhere, like shaking, if I would kind of pull on the street, it would be too far on the side, these side roads, he would go crazy. And last year, I was able finally, because we were constantly in the RV, I'm in an RV here. I was able to work with him while I was driving because he's next to me behind my driver's seat on the crate, and I will be able to kind of move a little bit, and the RV is shaking, giving them those treats, and that basically did a huge thing. So I feel we have to share about what's going on with this 4th of July thing, because I feel that especially after the COVID, there will be a lot of noise. People get it out, really. What do you think?
I think so too. I noticed as soon as my state shut down, things became very quiet. Wildlife started appearing. I couldn't hear traffic noise. If
Yeah,
I
right.
had to drive into a city to get fuel or something, it's like a ghost town. And I think it's going to be quite a shock for all the noise sensitive dogs when everything amps up again.
I get upset if I hear the train driving by. So, now you were very helpful. So we kind of talked to each other yesterday and wanted to be a little bit prepared about what we're doing today. So I looked a little bit on statistics, and guess what I found? Like horror numbers, like 30% increase of lost pets every year.
Wow.
Every year, 30% up. Okay. Now the next thing what's going to happen is that from those 30% that up, 30 to 60% pets will get euthanized because their owners couldn't be found. How stupid is that? Like, you're looking for your dog, you're searching for your dog, and because of all these noises at night, obviously the dog runs off, and the further he runs, the more noise he gets. It will be consistent through the whole day. It's kind of like being in a war. Which directions do you run? You don't know. And in freeze, fight, or flight mode, the dog will basically shut down and he will not remember where he is. And so my question is, how can we prepare to get these fellas be prepared not to lose their dogs? Because I don't want anybody who's watching that video to be in one of those statistics. That would be like super upsetting. So what do you think should people do?
Well, I've read your article on how to prepare for fireworks, and I thought you had really good information in there. Keeping your dog on leash,
Right.
maybe being extra careful about locking doors so family members don't casually go out to get the mail and their dog scoots out. Making sure your dog has identification, so maybe a collar with tags and a microchip Um, I would be just very careful, like I am with my farm animals, that you're always aware whether doors or gates are secure. And if you have animals who become frightened by noise, I'd keep them away from windows too. I know a family whose dog jumped out the second floor window twice,
Yeah,
uh, reacting to noise outside.
yeah. I was very happy because here, you guys, you can watch it. I think, can you? Right? Yeah. So
Hmm.
it was in 2007. That was kind of my first attempt to make things be better grammatically because my wife started helping me doing this write up. So basically, we could just put down all the information here. In fact, I have 60% increase instead of 30% that I saw before. So my bad. So this is basically more accurate than the previous one. So fireworks may enjoyable for humans, and in some states, it's actually in some countries, it's not allowed anymore. So there are silent crackers allowed, so you can see all these events of making those sparkling pictures, but not the loud noise behind that. So as you mentioned before, I totally agree with you. First of all, you have to keep your dog on a leash because it happened to me. I was fostering dogs, and I took my dogs for a walk, and it was kind of like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was kind of hot, and nobody will be out there. And I take my dog out for a walk, and I was like 100 feet away from my house. The neighbor starts shooting his stuff as a test drive, and I knew that I had a reactive dog in the house. That's why he was staying with me because he got panic attacks. And I wasn't fast enough to return home. In this 100 feet, he was shooting himself already through the door. Well, guess where I went next time? Like I was straight to the neighbor, show him the picture for the door, and he's like, "Holy bug, that was a lot." I was like, "Yeah, man, you don't do that. Like at least keep the time frame. Don't shoot whenever you want." And the next is check dog tags and microchip information. Because if your dog is not chipped or or tagged, nobody will find the dog. And if your dog is running like crazy, then it's difficult. I would definitely take a marker and put my name on it if I know that my dog is gonna panic about stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, very true.
Yeah, for my kids that were staying in the house, like my dog's kids, I call them kids. I saw that taking this um, what is it called? They use them in parties with these wraparounds. So they have this for dogs too. You can basically print the name on it. And I got from a friend who was running a boarding and kennel facility. I got those strips. You can basically print them, and I printed the dogs' names on it, and I put them around their collar, so they're visible. That was helpful. One other thing that I see here, and maybe you want to take over the next three and four if you see them.
Yeah, I think exercise is a great idea. Um, the more exercise I give my dogs, and it's not excessive, but they get enough walks that they feel very content. And right now at our home, we're having remodeling. So first we had the roof replaced. That took about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So you can imagine 5 men with equipment walking around on the rooftop making noise for 8 hours a day.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then when that ended, our porch needed repairs, so that's being remodeled. We've got another 4 men out there with loud equipment and saws. So it's an awful lot of sound stimuli for them to deal with. But I'm making sure they get several walks a day. They get time away from the noise. When they're in the house, we're playing games like Find It for food, and we're getting belly rubs. And
Right.
so they're actually able to lay down and take a nap while all this noise is happening. And exercise releases a lot of the good hormones that have a calming effect. So doing that before your dog's exposed to the noise of fireworks, for instance, sets them up for success. And there are things that you can put into the environment. And we did this with the roofers because the walls were shaking at one point. It was so loud.
Yeah.
So we closed the windows, turned on the air conditioning. We had a little ambient noise that way. Plugged in some I Calm Dog music, so they were listening to that, and they've already been conditioned to relax when they hear that. Um, I plugged in my adaptable diffusers, so I had two of them plugged in to cover two different rooms where the dogs would be.
Right.
And we continued playing games, so I was keeping them in a playful state of mind. I also used Zilkene, which
What's
is
that?
it's milk-based protein, so it's from cow's milk. It's in powdered form, and,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and I've heard recommendations from several board-certified veterinary behaviorists that it has been proven effective with anxiety. So I gave them Zilkene pill for breakfast or with breakfast,
Hmm.
just a little extra insurance so that we'd have something on board to help them get through all of that.
Yeah, my guys are on CBD oil um, that I have, which is organic and is spagyric extracted. So all these beneficial parts of the plant is still there and is not being forcefully extracted. Then I give them um, Bach's Rescue Remedies in their food in the morning. And then we start. I had an Adaptil in the past, but it didn't work for my guys because when they get too stressed, it's kind of like I forget about it. So I make mistakes also sometimes. I've usually had so many dogs that I literally forgot about it. I remember putting one Adaptil in the outlet and I forgot to refill it, and so it was running empty. Like great, right?
Yeah, that can happen.
Um, yeah, and what happened another time is that I had a dog that I fostered in my house, and he was the first sound that happened as if he knew the date. Usually he was normal and fine, but every time around the 4th of July, maybe he could hear, some crackers in the past. He knew what's going to happen. He was a gunner. There was no way to contain this dog. I called him Carpenter. You know what I mean, right?
Huh.
There was nothing to keep him contained, literally. So the only thing that was basically working is having him in the car with me, traveling around. So that was the
Hmm.
only safe place to have. So 4th of July, guess where I spent my night? In the car, driving around. Because at least
Yeah.
that association with having fun ignored basically the noise of surroundings. So that was the lucky part. So I basically conditioned him to have fun in the car and ignore the sound, which we're going to talk about anyway, right? So
Hmm.
some dogs tend to hide themselves. So I feel let the dog hide, usually in a place where is as far as possible of windows and doors because we have a problem with acoustics. Acoustics is kind of like water. Wherever there is a slot, it goes through. It's not like light where you can hide from a noise. It just reflects everywhere. So, science have hard time insulation of noises. And we here on the street, everybody wants to be quiet in the house. We have double pane windows and we still hear the noise, right? So the
Hmm.
more isolated you are and more far away you are from that noise, the better it gets. So if your dog wants to hide in a place that he perceives as quiet, let him go in there. Okay, blankets over the crate doesn't make a huge of a difference. However, I think limiting all this additional stimulus, even light, sometimes too much sound, sometimes too much going on, okay? Like parties of 4th of July, people coming over, and you have that kind of dog, it's not going to work. And I think we should prioritize our weakest member in the family and not just doing something because of 4th of July. Man, you know what? Have a pet sitter come into your house, take care of business, and you go have party, but don't make the party in the house if you know your dog is shutting down, right? And
Right.
what I suggest for those people, maybe take turns each year. One person stays at home and the other person's going party to the beach, watching, the starlights coming up. And so, yeah, I did it too. So staying at home is one thing, and I think we should discuss about, because many people get confused what to do. So in a couple of minutes, we're going to discuss things that you should do with your dog and things you should stay away from it. And now,
Sounds good.
how about you do the 7 and 8? So everybody sounds like I'm
Sure.
talking here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just had a Facebook conversation with a trainer by the name of Rise Van Fleet,
Mm-hmm.
and she posted photographs. Coincidentally, her house is under remodeling construction too, so she had photographs of, I think, 4 dogs resting comfortably among all of the lumber and the tools and such. And I commented on that, made a joke about my own experience. So we traded notes, and we both agreed, if people can be calm, and if you can be the secure base for your dog, so you're providing that emotional security when they do hear a noise, and they perk up and they pay attention, you can reassure them and comfort them. You're not reinforcing the fear, you're actually helping them realize, oh, that's not threatening after all. And we had that very experience last night. There was a sudden thunderstorm that rolled through, and my dogs are not normally disturbed by thunder, but Gandhi he's a Labrador, he was laying on his bed in the living room. The storm came through very quickly, and there was a thunderclap that must have been very near the house. It was extremely loud. So it wasn't a slow kind of rumbling noise. It just was a sudden explosion. And he perked up from his bed and he looked around. It looked like he's trying to orient, where did that come from? And the first thing he did was he looked at me. And then he looked at my wife. So he's looking for eye contact. And we responded to that. And he walked about 3 feet and sat upright. So he's got his paws up and put his paws on my wife's hands. And then I was stroking him. So we're doing some massage and things that we know make him feel good. So we acknowledge, yeah, that was a really loud noise, and it surprised me too. And we're here to support you. And a moment later, he was laying down again and resting.
Well, here's what I also see. Many people come in with such a weird, I think dominance theory must be the root of that, who says, well, your dog is jumping on you, is going to dominate you, going to take over your family. Your dog should not jump on you, and your dog should not be, you should be the boss and the leader, and you should put him in a crate, and you shouldn't do that. And I was like, come on, man, what is wrong with empathy? Like, you see an elephant upside down in a trench, and 50 elephants coming there to help him. That's empathy.
Right.
You see a cat being stuck in a corner, a dog tries to help her out. That's empathy. So if dogs and animals have empathy, why should we cut short? So if a dog feels the need to share his problem, he should have the opportunity to do that. Are we buying into a drama? No. Is this a reality? Are we gonna die? No. So, but I appreciate you coming to me. I appreciate you telling me how you feel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, I feel good about the situation. So how I feel and how you feel, we have a differential. So I'm gonna hold space for you to come down here and meet me halfway, and then we take care for the rest. So
Right.
if I get anxious because my dog gets anxious, because I am anxious, because the dog is anxious, then we're gonna have a vicious circle, and it will escalate, causing a dog a trauma. And we don't see the trauma factor here, that we cause the dog a trauma because our behavior. Now we see this with children. A child falls over the bicycle, has a boo-boo, and it depends on the mother or the father how it was going to end up. Going to end up being an issue with the bicycle, or going to end up it's going to heal and don't worry about it. Let's go back on track. Everybody falls over. If you don't fall, you don't learn, kind of, sort of. But making a drama and oh my God, and oh the world, the cars, the world, that causes a child a trauma. I mean, a bicycle must be very scary. I shouldn't drive a bicycle. What's going to happen? You're going to die, obviously. Listen to my mom. She ordered my dad. He got crazy about it. And I think dogs, because they naturally have the tendency to pick up information from our senses and how we behave around situations. If that loud bang makes us feel like that, well, I guess that's how we have to feel like, scary and worried. The dog cannot direct that worry to a specific directions because that sound comes from nowhere. It doesn't have a size, it doesn't have a body. It's a theory, theoretically. So the dog sees and looks at that like, how do you feel about that? It's like, oh my god, you're gonna get dying. I'm like, I'm get scared. Like if I'm going in the woods and somebody like shit, oops, sorry, something's gonna happen. I get goosebumps, I get scared, and I'm not scared in the woods. But it is attractive to be scared because that's how we survive. So it will become a survival instinct to tap into the fear rather than tap into the logic. And that's what dogs do. They tap into that logic. Did I mute you by any chance? Oh, okay.
Still here. I, yeah, I thought it was real interesting too because the storm passed quickly and there happened to be a fireworks display last night. So it's early and it's at a local racetrack, which is about 3 miles away. So maybe a half hour after the thunderclap, we had a long series of explosive sounds, and both my dogs were just happy as a clam. So I think the more secure we can make their life, the more predictable it is, the more we can comfort them when they need comfort. I think it gives them better coping skills, the same as you would if your little toddler was frightened by fireworks or something and came running to you and tugged on your pant leg. You wouldn't push them aside and accuse them of trying to be dominant. You'd practice empathy.
Yeah, and then we have to be educational. And I know people understand that sometimes it's difficult to educate the dog with words, but you can educate the dog with body language. If that happens, we're going for a walk. We're having these yummy bully sticks. Or let's have fun game. Okay? And yes, it being scary, and I don't want you to take the dog out seeing more of that sound and noise, but you can start making some games in the house. But our goal today is basically to be proactive rather than being reactive. So I feel if we coming from an angle, what can I do to prepare my dog before it becomes a problem? But before we know how to be proactive, we need to understand what's going to happen, right? So I think we put something together here, and help me remember the person, because you sent me those pictures. Help me remember who did that. Hey.
I had a little bit of feedback there. Could you repeat the question, Roman?
Give me a second, because I have some strange visitor dogs coming from the neighborhood. And they're fencing in my yard. Give me a second. I have to get sorted out. Okay, guys, everything is safe. This is what happens if you're alive. The neighbor's dogs are running over here and just want to play with my dogs. And my dogs don't want to have it because these guys are kind of really bullies. Not bulldogs, not bully breeds, just bullies that try to push against the fence. So I wanted to show what's happening and what we usually do when the noise happens, because sometimes we can see already things happening before actually the 4th of July. People just test drive, see, if the quality of their, crackers are good, if the price is good, if they test it before they buy more. So how can we deal with things actually happening? And then we're going to go over how we can be proactive. So who was that who wrote that? Dan?
Pardon me, Roman?
Who was that? Who you sent me a link today?
Oh, the graphic here is from Carolina Westland, who's an ethologist in Sweden.
Okay.
And she produced on her website, if you went to animal behavior consulting, where you
Mm-hmm.
did a search for her name. Um, it's Karolina,
Let me
Westland.
let me put that in here.
You'll
I have
see
it.
on her website, she has a download link so you can get a very comprehensive PDF which explains in detail all of the things that you're seeing on the graphic. So how to arrange the environment, um, creating distractions, how the owner's behavior affects the dog, using pheromones, which would be in the realm of adaptyl, is a dog appeasing pheromone.
Right, right.
Uh, you could use pressure devices such as a thunder shirt, or you could do a calming massage. Diet and medication can be a factor too. There are actually prescription diets that have ingredients like L-theanine, which would have a calming effect. I think one of them actually has the word thunderstorm in the product name.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Rescue Remedy. There's a probiotic. I think Calming Care might be the name. It's made by Purina. I've just
Yeah.
started using that. So it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to build up to effective level, but I'm giving Buddha that because of his history of separation anxiety. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
little something to keep him happy.
So I
Um,
think now we can
there are,
see it. There you go. So let me fix that. There you go.
and
So that's the website.
and the learning component is identifying the things in the environment that trigger a fear response. And I encourage people to actually write a list. So it might be a vacuum cleaner, it might be a hair dryer, fireworks, thunderstorms. Write a list of the things that frighten your dog and then systematically desensitize the dog to each of them. So in psychology, it's called desensitizing and counter conditioning.
Correct.
Um, there is a lady by the name of Amy Cook who has a PhD in psychology that taught a 2-day seminar on working with dogs who are fearful and reactive. And she described the process of sensitization is when something bothers us and we're repeatedly exposed to it. Once we're sensitized, that stimuli always produces a fight or flight response, triggers the physiological response of fear. And repeated exposure to that same stimuli doesn't desensitize the animal, it might make them more sensitive. So
Yeah.
if you think about the political campaign process that we go through, um, last time I think there were 18 months of political ads on television. And after the first several weeks, I was so fed up with political ads that I started muting the TV. And and that wasn't quite enough because I could still see them. So I would change the channel and then there'd be other political ads. So I ended up turning off the TV. So it demonstrates that I was so sensitized by those advertisements. I didn't care which party it was. They were just annoying me. So, so the remedy was to avoid the stimuli.
Well,
With
that is the
dogs,
problem. Many think many times dogs can end up attacking and hurting other people and dogs because of that overstimulation, that sensitization. So it becomes
right?
saturated to the point that you know what, one more bark and I'm gonna kill you. And we don't see that. We accuse the dog that went to the extreme to hurt another dog because of that sound. We call it redirected aggression, but basically the dog is fed up. He's done. Nothing stops it from happening. Well, I have to take care of it before that becomes a
Yes.
problem with the dog because it becomes a survival response. We see children with autism, they start hurting themselves because they want to stop that happening. They create their own stimulation around the problem. So barking, panting could be something that overrides the existing exposure. So the dog creates his own exposure to override the existing exposure, which is kind of like very intense.
Yes. So the key really is to understand what things are frightening your dog and then actively desensitize your dog rather than think, well, he'll just get over it or it's not that bad. And
Yeah.
desensitizing is a process of exposing your dog to the stimuli, like a sound of a thunderclap, but you do so in a very diminished manner. So if you had a sound recording of a thunderclap, you would reduce the volume to minimum. You'd have some really good food that the dog just loves or have a favorite toy. You'd press the play button so the dog hears the thunderclap and is aware of it, but is not frightened. So if I heard that thunderclap, I'd look and then I'd get food. So the food delivery is immediately after the trigger. And you repeat that process until your dog hears the sound effect and then shows you body language of happy expectation. Like, woohoo, I just heard that noise. Where's the food?
Mm-hmm.
That's when you're making progress. So you could gradually increase the volume and then maybe reduce it again and increase it a little bit. It's kind of like walking up a stairway where you're not constantly going further up the steps. You might go up a couple of steps and come back down. And then you go a couple higher and come back down. So gradually you get to the top.
Yeah.
And you only go at the pace that the dog is comfortable with. So if you do that, you can turn a frightening, scary sound into a sound that predicts food or play. And that changes the emotional context. So now you don't have barking or growling or running and hiding. You have like, woohoo, this is going to be great. I heard that noise.
I think that's
So
that's a very good point. We're going to discuss that a little bit more.
it's really effective if you do it in the proper sequence. So first there has to be the stimuli, and then you follow it with the food. If you're presenting the food simultaneously with the stimuli or before the stimuli, then you don't have conditioning.
No, because
So it's
actually
just
the food
small.
becomes same stressful as the sound.
So if you can master the process, and it's not as hard as it sounds. I worked with a couple of dogs that were really frightened of the doorbell, and I was coaching the owners, so we had a recording of the doorbell, so that the dogs would hear the sound, and the first time they heard it, they barked, because that's what they had been conditioned to do, and they ran to the door. But I had the volume on minimum, so the second time I pushed the button, they heard the doorbell, and I'm tossing food to them. So now they're busy searching for food, and probably within 20 minutes, both dogs would hear the doorbell and
Searching for food.
they'd look downright happy, and they'd look at their owners like, where's the food? And the owners were amazed because these dogs had been fearful of the doorbell and then fearful of visitors. And this had gone on for years, and it had only got worse because they were already sensitized, and the repeated exposure just made it more intense. So it can be a very quick process to turn that around. And if you do that for everything that your dog is frightened of, you're creating a much more relaxed, happier dog who doesn't have all those stress chemicals that are causing harm to health. And it'll give more peace of mind to the pet stewards too, that they know they have a happy, quiet family instead of being on pins and needles when a visitor comes over or a storm is expected or there are seasonal fireworks.
So Robin Goins had a question. What if the dog is fearful and they won't take food?
That's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked that, because if the dog is so fearful that they're not taking food, they have told you, this is too intense, I need more distance. So you would reduce the intensity of the sound. Maybe the dog would be a room or two away in the house so they're not right next to the source. And when your dog can be aware of the sound but not show fear, they're telling you, oh, I can learn now. So that's the point that you'd start with. If they can't take the food or they won't take the toy, they're just telling you, this is too intense, we need to reduce the intensity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really important question. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. So what I see is we have to come to the core of the situation. Why does the dog react to a sound? It's because he has no control of it. So if a dog doesn't have control of it, the first thing we should give him control. So when I do extreme desensitization of dogs who are reactive to sounds, reactive um, to visuals, like seeing a dog shape or seeing even a dog on the TV, I help them being in control of the event. That also applies with separation anxiety, because the reason why the separation anxiety is because the dog is not in control. What's going to happen next? So I help them by showing me any behavior, and I make things go away. That behavior makes that go away. I see that, I reward that, and then I ask him to offer me an alternative behavior. Instead of that, if you offer me this is being rewarded, and that is not so much rewarded, to make that go away. And once the dog feels more in control, then he automatically self-rewards him when he does that. So for example, if we go with a low noise and the dog shows panting as soon as the sound goes, well, panting is rewarded in the beginning, but if you go on your place, that's even more rewarded. And then if you lay down on your own, that's even more rewarded. So if that happens, what else can you do to make that go away? And then he recognized that he's in control of the sound, and because he's in control of the sound doesn't become scary anymore, even if it's there, because he has the feeling of control. And since he's in control of the sound, as big as he is not a big deal yet, because he can control it, so it's not a big of a threat. And I know it sounds weird and it doesn't fit in our concept, but if we look at ourselves, how scary we're sitting in a car trying to drive, and we had no control of the car. Well, that was scary. Until we figure out that we can drive 120 miles an hour without being scary, because we can be in control while it's happening. And so that event becomes a satisfaction itself, because being in control is self-rewarding. Because that control makes you survive. So we kind of shifted from being scared to death into be comfortable with it, because that's what happens sometimes, so no big deal, just like us. And I think the timing is very important. So if we do, for example, desensitizing the muzzle, I show him the muzzle, I make the muzzle disappear, and as soon as he makes eye contact, he gets a reward. You want that to go away? Good. Now look at me. Good. Here's a treat. Good job. Now here it is. And the dog says, I want it to go away. Oh, sure. Move it aside. It's still there, visible, and he gets the treat. Now he gets used to it, because that gives him the treat. And then I don't reward. And the dog will tell me, I have a problem with that. And you're sure, I understand. Here's a treat. I don't see it as a problem, but if you see it as a problem, I'm fine with it. It's totally okay for seeing that as a problem. Now, if you want more of those treats, what do? I look at the problem. Perfect. There you go. I get another one. It's like, you know what? I like that. The more I look at it, the more I get. So the more I flirt with my problem, the more rewarding it gets. Now, food is not always a motivation, because we know, scientifically speaking, that dogs like food and some dogs like petting. However, most of the dogs like food, and not all the dogs like to be rewarded or affection. So, and I've seen that hunting dogs are more likely to take food, and guardian breeds and herding breeds more likely to like affection. So what likely the dog would take is likely depend on what the breed he is. So why not offering both? So if you give the treat, give him a petting, so 100% you deliver 100%. If the dog doesn't want to get petted, he will move away, he will just take the treat. That's fine. If he wants to get petted, he's gonna stick his left and gonna eventually lean on your hand. That's fine too. If he wants affection as a reward to take it, it's fine with me. But if it's possible, we should not expose the dog to these kind of problems because we want to feel good about it. Yeah, I achieved my dog is desensitized, but the dog is still suffering with it. So if I can avoid it, that's fine. If I can change legislations that make those thunderstorm go away on 4th of July, well, yeah, we have better options. We can limit the time to a specific time so everybody can take care of business and not having this going on all day long and recreate the trauma that we already, most of us have. I don't know how these people feel like who are actually survivors of wars with PTSD, how they feel about that sound. If anybody is here and watching that, I would definitely would hear the opinion here because I think dogs suffer as much as people hearing those sounds, and it's not the brain that does the problem; it's the body that remembers it, and all the associated, uh, you know, combinations of that emotional pain.
I really like the idea of giving dogs choice and then reinforcing choices that in which they're controlling their emotions. Uh, so during this house remodeling, when our dogs would hear a lot of pounding and saws and that sort of thing, they would go and investigate, and I'd go with them, and they were just figuring out the source of the sound. They wanted to know what was happening in their environment. And when they responded calmly, I was praising and petting them for that. So I was telling them that's a really good response, and they're not barking, they're not lunging, they're not pawing at the window trying to get to the workers. And when they were satisfied that they knew what was happening, they'd move away, and I would praise and reward that. So it gives them control. They can move closer, they can move further away. And when they chose calm behavior, I made sure that they knew how much I appreciated that. For for Buddha, he's very food motivated, so he's happy to get a treat for being relaxed
Right.
with all that activity. And Gandhi prefers physical affection. So when he's uncertain, he would like to get petted and get his ears rubbed. And so we're happy to respect whatever the dogs require. And I think that's good advice for the pet owners too, is let's find out what your dog really values most and create a hierarchy. So the more stressful things are in the environment, you're giving them the things that they value more highly and not maybe a little piece of kibble or a word or two.
One thing we have to be careful the way we deliver the affection and with the way we deliver the treats and with the way we deliver the safety. Sometimes we force things. We think, oh, you have to go safe in your crate and close the door and do all these things. And the dog is like, I'm not ready to go in there yet. We have to be careful that sometimes petting the dog causes an additional problem because the dog doesn't want just to have affection. He wants the problem to be solved. And sometimes all it takes is to literally grab the leash and says, you know what, let's go figure it out. Let's see what's going on out there. So it's not a problem, like we don't need to be scared. No, let's go check it out. You know what? We're gonna fight it if we need to, because we do what we want. And then take the leash. Most dogs like to go for a walk. Now all of a sudden, the leash walk will override the fear. It's like, oh, we're busy. And so the dog is sidetracked. And what happens also with fear, it goes deeper and deeper if we don't have a solution to it. So it becomes a spiral and it becomes a negative thought form. If that happens, this is going to happen until the dog has a choice. If that happens, we can also do that. Now the dog is likely to try to get away of that emotional pressure and choose option B versus option A because it just feels better. And so it's very important, especially now we have still a week to go, that we are proactive and not assume, oh, my dog is just fine. Last year, it may not be as bad as this year. So the dog was already preoccupied from last time. He just got over it. And now it's been confirmed that this sound is bad. Because one time hurt is one thing, two times hurt, ooh, that's mean forever. Separation anxiety. Oh, my dog is fine last year, so this year is just fine too. No, it's not. Don't assume. Make sure it is. So if he's not fine, you're not leaving the house. If you're not sure, you don't risk it. The last thing you want is to have a separation anxiety because of thunders of these noises of 4th of July. The dog tried to break out. There's nobody there to help him. He thinks you're gone. He thinks you're gone forever. And he has a meltdown and he's going to destroy himself. Trying to get out of the crate, try to get out of the house, jump out of the window, get killed, get lost. I have seen a dog digging himself in less than a minute under a fence that was placed with concrete piles. There were cement bags there, the hard ones that are kind of moist get. So the person was smart enough to put cement bags so he knew the dog would never dig through it. Guess what's going to happen? The dog bit into that and pulled them away, all those heavy bags. Now tell me, how is this possible? So, Lisa, I've seen with my anxious dog that requires different things for me doing different instances. Sometimes treats, sometimes petting, sometimes yeah. That's what also Dan said. You have to always come from a perspective. What does my dog need? So you have to show empathy to your dog and recognize what does my dog need to feel comfortable. Yeah, and every country has different ways to show these fireworks. Yes, we start in December in Europe, but we have in Italy, they have other fireworks. I remember there is a war between fireworks, demonstrating a war between two cities, and they just, destroy themselves with them. Every country has, in Greece, for example, we have Easter going with fireworks, and trust me, they're going to throw Easters under your car and in your house just because it makes fun. It represents the thunder when Jesus died and he went up to heaven, and all this growling of the well, I'm missing the words now, but it was a religious reason. So every country has a reason. So there is no way a country doesn't use fireworks in one way or the other. And so proactive work is, and let's put some banners here so people can really come with that. Where do I have that? Oh, here we go. Off season, like before it's gonna happen, right? Watch your own behavior. Create that environment. What do we do? As you said before, you can put up a music, you can download those apps and sound machines, put it on your subwoofers, make it really go good, and start working on that. Start that making a noise where your dog is in control of, that if he looks at you, whoop, here you go a treat, and that is going away. If that happens, also we can go for a walk. What do you prefer if that happens? Do you want to get a treat? Do you want to go to your bed? Or you want to go for a walk? Why not the dog bring you the leash to go for a walk? Why not the dog brings you a comfort toy so you can tug of war with him because he feels that is a comfort? So I think as a parent, we should come in from a comfort perspective and make the problem go away in two ways. Either make it really go away or distract your dog so he doesn't pay attention to it. So there's a learning curve. And learning curve doesn't come in with explaining for the dogs. It comes through memory. So the more often you do it, the more likely it's become nature. And I wrote today or yesterday about how often should I do that. Too often is as bad as not at all. So if you do it twice a day, 3 or 4 times a week, that's totally fine. So now it's not so much time left, so you should kind of go to that edge, do at least twice a day for 15 minutes, okay, every day, so you're there before it actually happens. But if you see your dog has problems, you should definitely come and start doing it earlier. Donna, Our rescue Emma is terrified of fireworks, gunfire, thunders. I'm trying to decide if I should go somewhere for the 4th of July from populations in order to have a quiet, or would it be better to keep her at home where her space is familiar? Yeah, that's kind of a tough question. Um, Donna, I feel let's chat about that. So either contact Dan. I'll find Dan's info to be quickly. Oh, I'm on the wrong slide here. You either go to
But
Dan or message me so we can really look into that for better because I feel you need help in both ways. I don't know your dog's breed, but I think we definitely should kind of give you a heads up here and give you the help you need. Dan, you wanted to say something?
yeah, that's a really good question. I had a client that lived in Madison, which is about a 225,000 population in Wisconsin. They moved from Chicago. So their dog was perfectly acclimated to living in Chicago, which would drive me nuts.
Oops, what happened? You lost that. So anyway, I think I would definitely sentence. So it's basically that don't be scared that there's no out there.
To a quieter city, and they were about 4 blocks away from a lake. So they thought that was ideal. There's probably some stress involved in moving, new environment, new people. And they also moved to the part of the city that has the highest density of human and dog population. It's a really congested, active neighborhood, and they're on the bus route. So there's a whole lot of intense activity that the dog wasn't used to. And a couple of days after they moved there, the city had their annual fireworks display, which they launched from the lake. So now they're 4 blocks away from a relentless display that lasted over an hour. And their dog, who had been very stable and social, was absolutely terrified the whole time. And fear can generalize quickly, so it became fearful of all kinds of noises. A neighbor closing their car door or starting their vehicle, uh, people ringing
That's
the doorbell, coming
right
to
there.
visit them. So the dog became fearful of people as well. So in the family, one of the owners had studied psychology, the other was in the medical profession, and we talked about the option of using anti-anxiety medication because this dog had so many fears, so intense. And in that neighborhood where they lived, there's so many fear triggers that it was just more than the dog could cope with. So they began anti-anxiety medication. We began training and behavior modification exercises. And within about 4 weeks, instead of being fearful of the buses that would come along every 10 minutes, the dog would hear the bus, go seek out the owner, and would get a nice treat. And we did the same with visitors coming to the door and every other fear trigger we could think of. And ultimately, their plan for the next 4th of July season was to put their dog in a car, go out for a drive in the countryside, or go visit a neighbor who lives out in the country so they could just eliminate the exposure. And so even though the dog wasn't in the comfort of their home, the home would not have been comfortable during the fireworks. So they did a lot of desensitizing and counter conditioning, and then they just removed the dog from the environment. So they've been doing just fine. I was really proud of the effort that they made.
It
It was
really
all
does
for the dog's wellness.
works together. I feel in Donna's case, I would definitely suggest because we know there is a trauma, we know the dog already responds to that like that. Taking the dog for a ride would be one option away from the center of the events. I don't know where Donna lives, but if she lives in a big city where there is garages, deep garages, that's a good place to go. Get your snacks, get your music, go to the lowest level. It's super isolated. You will not hear anything down there. Put some music on and just have some snack with your dog. Give it a couple of hours. Okay. The peak is usually on sunset where you really see things, and then everybody stops happening, and then you have only kind of minor triggers. You can still handle them, but you don't have this boo 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 all the time going on. So she has a couple of days to work on that, to kind of shape off a little bit of that edge, and then they are already in town. We know already events. You can look up events on the city planner. You know what time things start. You're up and go and running in the car, some music, far away or deep down under, and just get out of it. Sometimes being in the garage with your car, some cars are really good insulated, will do the trick. Okay. Um, I I know that some dogs you can buy headphones. I don't think you can order them as quickly as possible to be back in time, and then you have to desensitize the head, and they really secure very well on the dog. I think I have a picture here on my web post. Give me a second. I think I can pull it up a little bit. Remove this. No, no, that's wrong. I didn't want that. There are actually headphones that you can use for your dog. Where are they? Yep, looks like that kind of sort of, but they kind of strap around the head and they're secured under the chin, so they're not going anywhere, and they have this proper adjustment, and they're triangle, so the ears are falling nice in place there. Um, and of course, medication will help. Now, some dogs, um, especially guardian breeds, if you add medication to desensitize them, to help them coping with that stress, they may get more reactive because they want to be alert while these are tranquilizers, and that causes additional stress. So you have to consult with your veterinarian or a professional who knows about the breed to kind of separate those guys. I personally recommend Great Pyrenees, Shepherds, Mastiff breeds, Guardian breeds. They're very sensitive. This medication is not going by weight, okay? Um, and you have to consult a veterinarian or a veterinary behaviorist to go through the process and measure how much do I need and how much should I stay away from it. Okay. Herbals are totally fine. CBD oil, sometimes it's just really the body response, keeping the body calm. So when the peak kicks in, how quickly my dog fades out of that situation. Sometimes doing an emotional cardio is a good way to work. Getting the dogs excited, calming the dog down. Getting the dog excited, calming the dog down. So we help the dog calm down faster after a trigger, which is you have a week to work on. Um, I know from dogs, Robin, for example, just mentioned here, is he had to go under narcosis to get X-rays. He fought so bad about it. They doubled the dose, and this dog will always get up again. And the doctor is like, "Wow, I've never seen a dog like that." I was like, "Yeah, we haven't dealt with mastiffs yet." We have used CBD and rescue remedy successful in the past. She's a pit bull. Oh. We live out in the country, so there is not only fireworks but also gunfire. Oh man, that sucks. Yeah, because you don't control that at all. Yeah, I feel a trip in the country away from civilization, a camping trip somewhere would be a good idea. And I think many campers are kind of more quiet than downtown. But I totally get it, Donna. That's yeah. Sorry to hear. I wish we can help you. Dan, you want to say something? Nope. I have to unmute you. Oh, no, I can hear you.
Sorry, I think I hit the mute button by mistake. So I live out in the countryside too, and we have a lot of gunfire.
Yeah.
And our dogs are not reactive, but if they were, I could get recordings of gunfire and play them at low volume, and then pair that with food the same as I would do with any other sound stimuli. So I've done that with dogs that were reactive to any loud noise, and it helped to desensitize them. You could also just have food handy. If your dog likes food, it's my go-to. So when I would hear a gunshot, I would just deliver food. I wouldn't say or do anything. I would just make the association really clear. When you hear a gunfire, food is coming. And I've found that very helpful for dogs that are, again, sensitive to noises in the environment, whether it's gunfire or something else. Anything that I can hear, I assume they hear it, and it makes food appear.
I agree. And so if you don't have gunfire, you just watch a police movie. There are lots of gunfire, lots to work with. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about Sileo? You just mentioned it before. I haven't heard of it yet, but I'm looking if anybody's used that. Maybe you want to give us a feedback on that. It's a simple.
Yeah, this is a product that I've heard several board-certified veterinary behaviorists recommend to audiences of veterinary professionals at behavior conferences. So, as Roman suggested, it's important to consult your own veterinarian. But the reason this product has been praised by the veterinary behaviorists is it was designed for dogs that had fear of loud noises like thunderstorms and fireworks. It's a gel, and you'd have to wear protective gloves like latex gloves. So you'd put the gel on your finger, you put your finger in the dog's mouth, and you rub it around. And it's quite effective and very quickly. So within a few minutes, you would have the benefit, where some of the anti-anxiety medications, even the short-term ones, would take an hour and a half to 2 hours to become effective. So if your neighbor suddenly was going to have their own fireworks display that you didn't anticipate, you'd have something that you could use quickly. But one of the downsides is it's expensive. So clients that have used it have told me it can become unaffordable, but it might be something to consider.
Right. So I found a link, and let me share that with you. And for you guys who have dogs in your area, you want to kind of pull down the noise a little bit because I give you kind of a sound trigger alarm. Okay. This website that we just went on, it's called Sileo, and so they have this tester. So you go on the. Let me shift it off. You go on that area, and you can use those. Perfect, right? And you can control those noises.
It's pretty clever.
Right? Awesome. So
You can down.
yeah, I'm going to share it with you guys so you can see it in the comments. Oh, we have a lot of comments here. Here we go. Let's check the comments. We're in the country too, and there's gunfire regularly, but more so on the 4th of July. So that link that I will share with you guys could be something you can start working with. And Donna said, okay, thank you for the ideas. Yeah, you're welcome. And of course, you can check in on the post and share your updates, your information, or contact me or Dan to discuss, your situation. I'm happy to help you with that. We covered pretty much everything, right? Did I miss anything? Does anybody have any questions? We have a couple of minutes. We're already beyond our time limit, but we're open to any questions.
I'd like to mention something that Eileen Anderson wrote. She has a master's degree in a couple of fields, including engineering and music. And she wrote a paper on acoustics, and it was specifically for fireworks and thunderstorms. And she suggested there are certain kinds of music that can kind of match or cancel the frequency of the fireworks. And so one of them being taiko, Japanese drum music. You could use a white noise machine. She even suggested something as simple as putting tennis shoes in a, a dryer for laundry and turn the dryer on. So you've got that rumbling noise, that constant kind of background noise.
Yeah,
She
I'm an
also,
inventor too, and I have to agree with those sound or noise equalizers. I think the first one who started it was Caterpillar because their engines were so loud, and so what they did is they synchronized. They had two engines. They synchronized the one engine with the other engine to minimize their noise by confronting the sound waves with each other. So yeah, there's a lot of studies done there. I would love that link. I would like to look into that, and maybe our viewers want to know and dig deeper. Because you know what we share here is not something we come up out of nowhere. We have experience. Dan has many years experience. I have many years experience, and we do refer to scientific evidence to confirm what we already do. I feel both we are pioneers in our field at some point, and I see science always confirming what I was saying 10 years ago, and people are laughing at me like, you're being an idiot. That's not what we do. And all of a sudden, now it's being proven. I was like, that's what I do. And so, what is that here? Robin says, would love for you to one of the sessions on resource people guarding in the future. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, some dogs in that stress environment can be also aggressive in that fear state. So we have to be very careful how we handle things. The way we maneuver dogs, the way we push dogs and let them do things. Eventually force the dog to take the pill can be kind of a trigger. So I would like to advise everyone not playing tough. It's okay to lose the battle and win the war. And it's not a big thing to ask for help. There's nothing wrong to get a second opinion before you make a mistake. Okay, if you're not sure about what you're doing. So Dan, really thank you so much for um, being with us today. You've been already very local. Oh,
it's been great fun. I'm glad we were able to offer so many ideas that can help people. So thank you for having me.
good. So let's say goodbye to everyone, and we discussed a couple of ways to keep your dog safe and happy of the 4th of July. Looking forward to hear back from you next week. And yeah, if you have any questions and you want to learn more about how we approach things, maybe you want to post in the comments and we discuss. Maybe we can do a session about that or a show about that.
It's good.
Talk to you soon, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is Coffee with Holistic Dog Professionals. Learn from Roman and David how to become your dog's best friend.